Hey guys, it's Brendan Logston here. We have a very special guest today that just so happened to pop in. This is my grandpa Dorn, Arden Dorn, and we spoke briefly about him. He actually had one of our first classic car restorations completed at Valor Restorations. So I'd like to introduce you and welcome to our podcast, Grandpa.
Well, thank you, Brendan. Great to be here and sitting in this place you call the wheel and see all these classic cars all around me. It reminds me um, of a little project that we did with my truck.
Awesome. What year was that? Do you remember what year we
You
started
know,
that?
I can't remember when we started that, but we moved to Texas. Um, so I'm guessing we moved around the 2010. So I think it must have happened around 2011. Could that be?
I
Uh,
think that's about when the shop started. We just put up that paint booth, and it sounded like that was the first car that we actually painted in the new paint booth.
oh, yeah, it was. And I hadn't even thought about restoring this truck. But that Christmas before, two of my grandsons, um, Garrett and Colin Dorn, they had decided they wanted to really clean it up for me for Christmas. So they presented me on Christmas Day with a little envelope, and it had lots of pictures in it. And I thought, oh, I wonder what this is all about. And then they had taken pictures of how they had cleaned the truck from top to bottom, and it had never looked so good as long as I had had it. So
That's
I was
awesome.
really excited. And then it was right after that your dad was getting into restoring classic cars, and he said, "Arden, do you think would you be interested in us? Would you let us give that truck a new paint job because it really needed one?" And the old plastic that had been sprayed on that uh, original paint to keep it looking good had peeled off, and it was just peeling off all over the place, and it looked really bad. So I was excited about doing this.
Well, we were excited to have you as kind of a guinea pig. Thank you for offering your beautiful truck as that. But it turned out really cool. And I want to go take a step back, talk a little bit more about this truck and why it was worthy of a restoration. Excuse me. So, what was the nickname of this truck? Do you want to go back to
Oh,
that?
yeah. Well, I bought this truck in Colorado. My wife and I had found this little cabin in the mountains that we loved, and so everything we had everything we needed, and I was so happy with the cabin and finding a place that we both loved. But then I thought, what I really need is a pickup truck. And so I started looking, and I found this truck one day, and the lady wanted $2,700 for it. And I said, well, I can't afford that. And so I just gave it up. And then we had a very rough winter. And then 6 months later, I saw it at the country store where I would often stop on the way to Woodland Park, Colorado. And it was there, and I asked the guy, I said, what about this truck? And he said, well, a lady up the road's trying to sell it. And I said, I want to buy it. And so I gave her a ridiculous offer, and she accepted. And I was so happy to get this red truck. Three on the tree. It was my dream truck. And
It was definitely worthy of a dream truck. I think 67 through 72 is a bump side Ford,
this
and
was a 71.
it was gorgeous. It was, I think, the Wimbledon white two-tone with a Ford red color that it just jumped out at you, and it jumped out at my sister. I always refer to this truck as Clifford, the big happy truck, and that's kind of what we always called it. I don't think you're familiar with Clifford, the big red dog, but Chelsea named it that, and I remember there being a sticker, so we always called this Clifford. But this thing had a really cool story, and I wanted to kind of talk to you about the restoration process too. I know we're going all the way back to 2011. My gosh, it's like 13, 14 years ago at this
Oh, I
point.
know.
But did you just hand him the keys and say, have at it? Or did you kind of involve yourself in the OEM colors that you ended up going with? Do you remember any of the process?
Well, I was a little bit involved in picking the color, the red, and I said, well, I really, if we're going to restore, let's bring it back to its original. So your dad and another fellow who was working at the shop um, did a lot of testing on what kind of color this red was, because there were several varieties of red. I mean, there were different colors of red, which I didn't know, but they came up with very close to the original color. And so I said, "Hey, have at it. I'm not picky about it. It's just got to be red and white." So that we started, and I did not come by and take a look at all much because I was so busy. I was working in churches in the area, and I was directing the Texas Hill Country Opera and Arts. I didn't have time, so I just said, "Hey, take this truck and have fun with it."
Well, we definitely had fun with it, and we had one of our painters of the time prove himself on how beautiful he could turn a paint job. But I think the paint that you selected with a pretty quick choice was great. We have customers that also want to be a lot more in-depth, and they want many spray outs before they make this final decision. But it sounded like you just knew what you wanted, and you said, hey, just run with this. So
I did.
it's always a different experience. But what was it on the back glass, and what did that mean to you? Kind of what made this a sentimental car?
Well, I have to say, first of all, this truck was a very happy truck. And I knew that because the guy that owned it, I was the second owner. And I met the elderly gentleman who owned it before. And he had to get rid of it because he was having health problems. But he took one last ride with me in the truck. And we went riding around the mountains, and he said, "Oh, this truck made me so happy." He said, we lived like 25 miles from Woodland Park, but I would think of any excuse that I could to just say, I've got to go into town because I loved driving this happy truck. It made me so happy. And it made me so happy. Then it made my grandchildren so happy. And I remember when your oldest sister right away said, "This is Clifford." And I learned about Clifford later, but yeah, it was such a happy truck because everybody that came into that truck and went for a ride, we always had a blast. We were laughing. We'd turned the radio way up. I was so excited because the radio was still in it and worked great, and it had a great tone, and we would turn up the music and ride through the mountains and just laugh and have fun. And I could put all the grandchildren in there.
It's a long bench seat.
Oh, yeah.
You could fit a lot of people across there.
Yeah, and 3 on the tree so that, they didn't have to move their knees or anything because they could just all sit there and be happy.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, I'd have many fond memories of that truck. I remember in Sedalia, you had it parked in the lower deck of that cabin, and I would just go and admire that truck. And I think maybe that's what made me fall in love with Ford trucks, because I've always been a Ford truck advocate. Now I have a 77, a little bit newer of a truck, but it looks very similar in a Indio tan color. So maybe you were planting some seeds to like Ford trucks when I was maybe 10 years old. But such good memories in that truck. I'm so happy that you were one of our first customers to get that done. But I remember my great-grandfather, who I remember going to see in Nebraska. He had a big farm, and he had a really cool saying that I've seen on a lot of your really sentimental items was, "Any day is a good day to live," and I've seen it phrased different ways, but that has been something really special, just the image of the back glass saying that, thinking of George Dorn, who our second son's middle name is George, so we included that in our family to continue his memory. But what is that quote, and what does it mean to you?
Well, it was a very famous Indian chief that had the quote, "Any day is a good day to die."
Oh.
And my dad said, "You know what? I'm going to flip that a little bit, and I'm going to say, not a, I mean, my dad did believe that any day was a good day to die, but he flipped that and said, any day is a good day to live."
Uh-huh.
And so on my dad's funeral, when the uh, church bells at Zion Lutheran Church in Pickerel, big bells rang for about 15 minutes. They were the happiest bells I ever heard on a very sad day. But any day is a good day to live. And that truck, brought so much life. And it had a life of its own. I really believe that we live in relationship to everything that God has created. And trucks, the vehicles that we drive, they're part of us. They take on our personality, actually. And if you can believe that inanimate things have personalities, I happen to believe so. And that truck was happy, and it still is. The people that bought it are so happy with it. I wasn't even intending to sell it. I wasn't going to paint it either because I couldn't afford it. And then, because I had checked around, and we could do a paint job, but I knew it was just going to be spray it and not very good. And so then when your dad offered to do it, I was so excited. And then to have it done for free, I mean, what a gift that was. So it was just a neat feeling to know that that happy truck was going to be restored, which is also like a spiritual image for me. Like, um, as we go through life, we deal with so much stuff. We have bumps and bruises and scratches and whatever, like vehicles. But in people's lives, forgiveness and grace and love and hope really restores us, and God does that to us all the time. Always making us new, giving us a new start every day. So that happy Clifford had a new start.
And it started up every time.
Yep.
If you knew how to drive a 3 on the tree, which
that's you saw it underneath that that coverage, and well, it had sat there for about 8 months.
Oh wow.
And the battery was dead, so I had to charge the battery. And then I thought, oh my gosh, I hope there was enough antifreeze in there, because it got down to 50 below zero.
Oh,
so I didn't know
geez.
if it would start, and I couldn't believe it. I put the battery in. It had been sitting that whole time, and it started right up.
Wow. That's amazing when you think about it.
Oh,
It really is.
that little V6 engine. I mean, it didn't have the power that I wanted, but man, that thing, it'll probably run, I don't know how long, but so easy to repair too.
The 6-cylinder was notorious for being pretty indestructible. So that also is kind of, when I think about a car, they all have their own heartbeat. You have these big 440s like we have in the Dodge Polara, and then
Yep.
you have the little 4-cylinders in the Carmagia over here, and they each have their own benefit. And it's just like you said, each car is kind of like, it has its own personality and something interesting about it. So that's part of why we love what we do here. The memories that we make with Grandpa in this instance, and with all of the interesting people we met with interesting stories on these beautiful vehicles that we get to restore. It is just a blast. So I think we're going to wrap this podcast session up, but you almost had me in tears over here. Thank you, Grandpa, for coming out today, and we will definitely do some more of these.
Very good. Well, it's been fun being part of this, and as I look over the vehicles out there, I can tell these cars are all very happy, and they are thankfully restored and enjoying life.
Well, that is the overall theme, I think, today is be happy. And let's restore these old vehicles. But Grandpa, thanks for coming on. I'm going to stop the podcast here, and we'll see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.